Good morning, students.
Good morning, sir.
Right. So we were able to finish the implementation part last Monday. Today we are going to do the rest. That is, still we are discussing about the training and development or the HRD process, in which so far we have discussed need assessment, uh, then designing part, the second stage of the process, the third, implementation. Now the fourth part, evaluation of HRD programs, right? So evaluating HRD program is the today's topic, right? So you have, as usual, you have the outcomes, learning outcomes, and this is the design, this is the process, assessment, designing, implementation, and evaluation. So in this, we are supposed to discuss these sub-steps, right? So what then HRD evaluation means? What is an evaluation, right? So evaluation is a systematic collection of descriptive and judgmental information necessary to make effective training decisions related to the selection, adoption, value, and modification of various instructional activities. In other words, right? So you don't have to cram all these words. You are supposed to write the meaning of this definition by your own words, right? So HRD evaluation, basically what, when it comes to the management evaluation, right? So when it comes to the fundamentals of management that was taught at your first year, right? So basically we have planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. The controlling is the last management function, right? As that, uh, in the HRD functions, in the HRD uh, uh, subject, in the HRD function, in other words, the last function is kind of a controlling, that is, in other words, known as evaluation, right? So evaluation, in the sense that, as you can remember, at the designing stage, we set out the objectives, training or development objectives we basically developed, design for a training program or development program. As you know, we discuss about developing, setting training or development objectives is essential. That is the first step. That is the first step, developing objectives, right? So now at the evaluation, what you need to do is you need to check whether objectives have been achieved, right? So as I always am telling, these are the outcomes, objectives, right? So now at the end of this lesson, you should be able to do this, define this, compare this, discuss. These are the action verbs that you need to demonstrate at the end of this course, at the end of this lesson particularly, right? So now I just want to know whether you can do this, whether you can define this, whether you can compare this, whether you can discuss, whether you can evaluate. What can I do? Whether you can explain what can I do? So I can give you a test. I can give you an assignment, and I can give you a oral viva voce examination, right? Simply I can ask you a question, right? So define what do you mean by evaluation, and compare. I'm going to teach you two frameworks and compare the differences between these two frameworks for HRD, and discuss what are the types of evaluation informations available, and compare those methods in data collection for evaluation. So you have to discuss, right? So I can ask these type of questions. Those are evaluations, right? So evaluation is checking whether we or the participants or the learners of a training or development program have achieved the targets, achieved the learning outcomes, achieved the given training objectives, design training objectives. Already designed training objectives have been achieved or not, to check whether uh, objectives have been achieved by the participants. Simply that is the evaluation, right? So for that evaluation, you need various information, right? So that is a systematic collection of information, judgmental information, right? So for example, at the end of this course, I will give you an examination paper and you write the answers. That is uh, kind of an evaluation. I need to evaluate your answer scripts, right? So in that, I systematically collect information. Uh, Collecting information means simply I'm reviewing your answers. Systematically, I'm reviewing your answers and make a judgment on your about your knowledge level that you have acquired from this entire lecture series. Likewise, evaluation is a kind of a systematic collection of descriptive and judgmental information. That is descriptive and judgmental. Judgmental is then simply the evaluator judge whether the learner has learned or not, or at least the level of learning, in which level, whether by giving simply by giving marks, we can, as you know, we are giving marks from 0 to 100, right? So then the 0 denotes the low, the no knowledge acquired, and 100 denotes, as usual, the maximum knowledge that have been given is acquired, has already been acquired. So in that sense, the depending on that range, the marks obtained, simply we can judge the level of understanding, right? To make effective training decisions. Why we need to evaluate this? Because we need to further, because as you know, people are our resource, right? So we invest a lot of money to train them. We invest a lot of money to invest them, right? So we need to get the payoff for them, for our investment. Maximum benefits need to be, we need to get, right? So from the investment that we already done for the development of people. So that therefore we need to check whether we need to systematically check that they have learned or not, right? And the level of learning and their level of learning, we need to systematically check. So that entire process is known as evaluation. For what? To need to make decisions, further decisions, right? Suppose 10 people participated to the training program or development program. Then we, at the end of the program, we evaluated their level of understanding. We got a feedback by means of an evaluation, so then we understood that out of the 10 people, only two has acquired the maximum benefit. 8 of them, majority of them are less than let's say 20 marks. So which means that they haven't learned what we targeted to give. So in that case, we sometimes we need to check whether sometimes there may be a problem of the resource, of a resource person delivered the session, or maybe outside factor like environmental, or maybe situational factor, or maybe a problem of a material, or maybe a problem of a delivery method, right? So we need to check whether where the things went wrong, right? Because because all these are money, because the organization invests so much of money to train people. So then organization, the HRD people want to know the top management about the investment, the maximum payoff that the top management has committed to invest on people, right? So that's the only responsibility of the HRD people. So therefore, they need to do an evaluation to show that the people have learned very much, that the program has really has been successful, or the program is really successful. To denote that, or maybe sometimes the opposite can happen. Maybe really the program may be really unsuccessful. In that case, they need to find out why that has been not successful. The reasons why we need to find, they need to find out the reasons why, right? Maybe a proper assessment may not be done, may haven't be done. Uh, it's then designing problem sometimes can occur, or maybe a problem of an implementation, or maybe a kind of an evaluation problem, right? So anywhere in the HRD process, sometimes due to an error, sometimes, or maybe sometimes really uh, a problem of a entire HRD process results and ultimately a bad outcomes of the training and development. Those outcomes can be only known by the can only be known by the evaluations. If evaluation is not done, we can't determine whether the program is successful or not, right? So that's why we need to have an evaluation only to determine whether the program is successful or not, because ultimately the HRD people need to show the program is really successful or not, because they are accountable for that because the top management invest so much of money, allocate so much of money on an annual basis, because they are preparing annual budget for the entire organization. They allocate money for the people development, uh, the employee development, right? So then in that case, the charity people are really accountable to show the maximum payoff from the uh, uh, investment done, right? So for that, basically, they need to do an evaluation. Right. So the purpose of evaluation. So from that explanation, I believe you can understand what are the purposes of evaluation. So I explain in detail everything in the process, what we are need to do. Obviously, from that you can understand. You can develop your own objectives or the purposes, so you can simply understand the purposes of doing this evaluation, HRD evaluation. One purpose is to determine whether the program is accomplished is its objectives. So obviously, as I told you, uh, to check whether objectives have been achieved or not, and to determine if the program was appropriate. Sometimes the content may not be appropriate, the program may not be appropriate. Sometimes, what do you call this? Irrelevant people may be selected at the uh, need assessment level, right? So because we need to make it clear and make the entire process done very systematically and very clearly and very correctly at each level: need assessment, designing, implementation. Failure in any part may ultimately result to the failure in the evaluation part, right? So we need to make all the stages successful, make all the stages very correctly done in order to have a successful HRD program. So therefore, we need to carefully do the assessment, carefully do the designing part, and carefully and appropriately need to implement the implementation, and at the same time, once that is done, evaluation part by using proper evaluation techniques. right? So now afterwards, I will give you what are the evaluation techniques. Sometimes the results may not be successful due to the evaluation problem. Sometimes people might have learned everything, but the way how you evaluated them due to a evaluation problem of an evaluation technique that you use, sometimes the results may be unsuccessful. Results of a particular training program shows that the entire program is unsuccessful because the participants do not show proper knowledge, proper skill, the target improvement. So therefore, that can happen due to a problem of the evaluation technique, right? So therefore, that's why we need to determine as HR, as a professional HRD people, you need to select the ideal evaluation technique depending on the program, depending on the nature of the program, depending on the nature of the participants, right? So you need to have the knowledge to select the best appropriate evaluation technique which really fits to the context and the nature of the HRDO training program, right? So therefore, those are the main objectives or the purposes. We are in now the second one, whether to determine whether the program is appropriate or not. Then third one, identify the strengths and weaknesses. Then to determine cost benefits, right? So invested money is, let's say, 1 million. Then what are the benefits? So benefits cannot be determined at the just completion, right? So therefore, maybe the return may be will let's say the return comes after 10 to 15 years, right? So for example, the investment made for your degree by the government, Sri Lankan government, for your management degree, HRM degree, we have nearly 120 students, right? Outcome may take some, in order to, have the outcome, very good outcome, it may take sometimes 10 to 15 years, right? So we have now become as these people uh, because of the investment the government made for us on us, right? So we can now earn money not only from in local context but also from an international context. We can earn money, so that can happen in the near future from you as well. So that can be done, right? So that's a result of the investment the government made. So therefore, simply we can simply analyze the cost benefit by at the evaluation, right? Simply you can do your HRD final research dissertation. For your dissertation, you can simply um, select a topic on evaluating a particular training or development program, right? So whether it gets maximum benefits, or let's say government funding for undergraduates is benefited or not, right? Government funding rather than self-funding is benefited to the economy. Which one is the best? Simply you can do it for your dissertation, right? So that's a kind of an evaluation, right? By doing a research is a kind of an evaluation. Research by doing a research, simply it's a kind of an evaluation. So therefore, determine the cost benefit. Uh, Simply a ratio uh, uh, of a HRD program can be done at the evaluation. That is another purpose of HRD evaluation. And another one, identify which participants benefited the most or least from the program. Suppose we did the program for the sewing machine operators of a garment, sewing machine operators and the line supervisors of a garment factory. So then we can simply determine which people benefited, which category of people benefited most or least from the program, which participants. Or maybe sometimes if the participants are in different year ranges, age ranges, Obviously, we have employees from 18 years of age up to 55 years of age. Then simply we can determine which category, 18 to 30 people, or 30 to 40 people, or 40 to 55 people, which category mostly benefited and least benefited, right? So that's kind of a research that can be done under the evaluation. So those are the basic uh, purposes, and apart from that, gather data to assist marketing future programs, right? So simply once you, because you can market. For example, suppose our degree program, we can do an evaluation. Normally that is done at our convocation. We give a questionnaire for each and every student to determine the employability just at the convocation. That is a quality assurance requirement. At every convocation, students are given the particular lengthy questionnaire. Then in that, students are supposed to fill the questionnaire. Obviously, there are so many questions about your internship period and your current employment just at the convocation, right? So then suppose we have 120 students already just passed out and now at the convocation, and suppose all of them are employed, having, let's say, different HR executive type jobs, doing all of them are HR executive type jobs. So then executive and above jobs, minimum job our students, average student gets is minimum level of job is HR executive, right? No one doing HR clerk and other related jobs, lower level jobs. So all of them are doing above minimum from HR executive, junior executive, and above positions, right? So then our degree program success is 100%. Employability is 100%. So then we can market our program, right? Because that's the only indicator we can show that our program is really successful, effective. Because our people, if we are able to create graduates who are really employable at the convocation, just after the um, graduation, so then the effectiveness of that program is really high, right? So we can simply gather data whether a particular program is successful or not. And if it is successful, we can use those data to market the program, right? Suppose if we are a government, not government, private sector university, suppose we have now uh, Sri Lanka. In Sri Lanka, we have many private universities. These days, they are in the process of enrolling students, and they are doing huge marketing campaign to get the students, get more students, and simply they can use those statistics for the marketing, right? So for the students enrollment at the marketing campaigns, as you noted in the LinkedIn and these days in social media, all the private universities are now engaging in marketing their education programs to enroll so much of students. And there is, with the current uh, trend in Sri Lanka now, currently what we are facing these days, depending on the things that we are facing these days, there is a huge trend of students who are, selecting private universities. Because when all the private universities offering their degree programs with an affiliation with the foreign university, so then they have transferring programs, and now almost all the majority of the students are intending to transfer or the migrate, especially to migrate. Then that's the only option they can select. So they can stay simply 1 or 2, 3 years here, and the final year there, and finally they can have the work permit once the degree program is done. Then they can do the masters and PhDs. Then once they are done, they get the work permit for 3 years. And obviously, once the people are working for 3 years, obviously they can apply for the PR. So that's the shortcut for having a PR in a developing country, right? So see our people, what will happen to our people? And they stay here, and still we are facing an strike, and they are suffering. They are now waiting for a job just after the graduation. And if a job is not secured for them, then what will happen to us? So many problems, right? So that's why people now, even it is money oriented, even the people, the students have to self finance. So they treat as rather than getting the free education from the government, they think that paying money or by self financing, uh, they can get a get the investment done or recover the investment done very soon, very quickly. Maybe 1 million or billion, or 3 billion, 3 million, 40, uh, let's say 3 to 5 million or 50 million maximum. They invest for that, but that can be recovered in 1 to 5 years when they settled in other developed countries, because the salary levels are so much high. Uh, this is really practical for the engineering, IT, and biomedical sciences, and those kind of technological related streams, right? So that's why people, that's the trend. So therefore, in a that's another thing. But our talk, what we were discussing about is the purposes of HRD evaluation. So simply evaluation can be done to gather data to assist for the marketing campaigns, right? How often are the programs are evaluated? How often? At the end of the program, or before the program, or in between, or at the implementation, right? So HRD program should be regularly and carefully evaluated. That is the theory. Principally, that must be done at the evaluation. Sorry, all the HRD programs must be regularly evaluated. For example, now I am doing an HRD program. I am preparing you for your future. This is a development program, right? So our degree program is a kind of a development program. You are preparing for your future jobs, right? So then, uh, sorry, you are being prepared for the uh, future jobs. In that, basically, suppose now I am doing a part of it, right? So, and when I should the evaluation be done, right? So now itself I can do it, evaluation from the things that I was talking about from the start up to now, right? So I can do an evaluation now. Simply, I can give you 5 questions, or I can give you a reflective essay to write and submit it to the LMS. What you learn from this, right? So idea is uh, programs need to be regularly evaluated, not just at the end. That people misunderstood, that people have a misconception that evaluations must be done at the end, right? Still, those misconceptions are still followed by our faculty as well. As you know, once the program is done, you are given an evaluation form, lecturer evaluation form attached on just attached to the LMS, and very few of you only fill that, right? So last term as well, last semester as well, I taught you around 120 students, but only less than 20 people filled the questionnaire, right? So then see the effectiveness of the program. So how we can determine with the effectiveness, successfulness, or failure, or what are the big strengths and weaknesses of the program, or for the of the lecturer, right? So simply those are the drawbacks. That's why we are literally uh, uh, the regular HRD programs must be uh, evaluated regularly, right? So that's why those type of evaluations have been recommended to do them regularly. So therefore, our task is to evaluate the program on a regular basis, not just at the end. Maybe sometimes we can evaluate before starting the program, right? So those evaluation techniques will be discussed later on. Then you can understand this idea uh, further. Right. So one is a model of evaluation, one evaluation framework, one evaluation model, which is known as a framework, or in other words, that's a kind of a theory that was proposed by Donald Kirkpatrick, and that is known as Kirkpatrick evaluation model. And we have various other models for evaluation, and those are the research findings, CIPP, CRO. These researchers have system approach, and we have pre-test, post-test approach, control group approach, and so many things are there, right? Techniques are there, which can be used for evaluating a training or development program. So we'll take one by one. First, we take the Kirkpatrick's uh, evaluation framework, right? So basically, he suggests 4 levels in that framework, 4 criteria, in other words, right? So to evaluate, simply we can assess criterion 1, reaction, right? So what does that mean? It intends to assess how well and how far the trainees like to the training program. Once employees are participated to a program, at the end of the program, so this principally this methodology, this evaluation framework can be applied only at the end, not in the middle. So principally, this can be applied in the middle or at the implementation level, but get best results when you apply this methodology uh, at the end, once the program is finished, right? So then at the finish, or at the end of the program, once the entire program is finished, then we can ask some questions that were designed under these main criteria, right? 4 criteria. So criterion 1 is the reaction level. So simply we can include some questions to understand the reaction level of the participant. Simply the idea of reaction is how well and how far the trainees like to the program. So that's what we need to evaluate under the reaction, how well and how far the trainees like the program, right? So simply to assess that, to know that, to understand that, we can give a questionnaire, or we can simply interview employees one by one and ask these questions, these type of questions. Whether the program was successful, yes. Whether the program content is really interesting, yes, right? So and they whether you recommend this program to somebody else, yes, 100%. So if you get these type of questions, then program is really successful, right? It is better to get the reactions from the trainees immediately after the training, not 1 or 2 years after. Sometimes the training content that they learn might have been forgotten once you get delayed, once you are so much late for getting the uh, uh, feedback, right, about the reaction after a considerable time. So don't take the reaction level after a considerable time. So please take the reaction level evaluation just at the end of the program as part of the uh, training and development program. Then simply you can cover these areas to uh, uh, develop questions on reaction, right? So basically, simply to assess the reaction level, you can create questions covering these areas. Content of the program, whether the content of the program is really interesting, whether the materials that you are supposed to use is interesting, or whether you are able to learn something uh, mm, from the materials given, and training methods, training durations, venue, timing, meals and refreshments, trainees, trainers, most appropriate aspects of the training and most inappropriate aspect of the training, suggestions for improving all these things, right? So please remember, carefully listen and learn all these things, because you have to develop a training program or a development program for your first assignment, right? So in that, basically, you need to develop these kind of documents, evaluation frameworks, right? Then learning, uh, second one, second criterion, uh, just we need to assess whether they have learned something, level of their learning from the content of the training or development program, right? So it basically intends to assess the degree to which learners have learned from the training. Degree, which level? Whether all the students, whether all the participants scored 100% marks, 100 marks, whether all the students scored less than 50 marks, how many of them 100 or more than 80 marks, scored more than 80, uh, how many of them are less than 30, right? So likewise, simply we can assess their learning level. For that, basically, again, we can ask some questions, or simply we can assess their marks if an examination is conducted as part of the evaluation, right? So techniques to collect the data is the best ideal technique is holding an examination, or maybe a viva voce, any kind of because examination implies that there are so many types, examination types, maybe written exams, oral exams, right? Demonstrations, presentations, any kind we can use, but commonly we can use examinations, paper and pen test or practical test. Exam or practical test should include questions pertaining to the training content. So what we do for you is holding exams and doing letting you to do assignments. Then third one is the behavior, right? So if you learn something, because from the definition, can you remember the definition of learning? Learning is the relatively permanent change in behavior. That's how you can define the learning. If you learn something, obviously your behavior is changed. That is totally different from your previous behavior. If you learn something, right? Uh, so then at the evaluation, the third criterion you can do is simply you can evaluate the behavior, whether the participants have changed their behavior. because they were sent to the training because of their behavior, for their behavioral modification. For example, they were earlier not motivated to work, or their moral were very at were at very lower level before the training. Now we need to check whether their moral and behavior or motivation level is really high. Right? Sometimes their attendance is very low. They are taking leaves. Right? Now, after the training, we need to check whether they are attending the organization. Sometimes their performance, maybe they have had earlier so many grievances relating to their organization. Once the training program is finished, level of grievance received need to be monitored from the employee side, from the participants to the program. And so likewise, the behavior need to be evaluated. To what extent did the trainees develop a relative permanent change in their behavior? Need to be assessed. What techniques we can, what is the technique? What are the techniques where we can use? Simply performance evaluation data can be used. Right? And here we have different techniques. We can have a 360-degree feedback, BAS, behavioral anchor rating scale method, or BOSS. There are so many when it comes to the performance evaluations. In the performance evaluation or the performance management subject teaches various performance evaluation techniques, right? Behavioral anchor rating method is one, 360-degree feedback is another one, and various other methods are there. From those results generated from those techniques can be used to assess whether the behavior has been improved or not. Then results. Again, performance results can be used. Evaluation results can be used. Simply, individual employees' performance results has been increased, or division, suppose HR department, suppose the operations department, suppose the let's say production department, all the production employees were sent to a particular training, right? So once the training is finished, after 1 month of the training, then simply check whether employees' performance have been improved or not. Earlier, their performance level, the divisions or the factory operations department performance level were at 60%. Now, after the training, it has been increased up to 65 level. So which means that you can simply determine 5% increase is there that has resulted due to the training, right? So results. For example, techniques, productivity assessment, turnover, absenteeism, quality, accidents, cost, waste, customer satisfactions, etc. can be taken as the criteria to measure the measure the results. Right. So this method, only criticism is of this method is, but as I told you, at the end, only this method can be applied at the end, not in the middle, or not just before the training program, right? So regularly we can't apply this program, this method framework to evaluate, uh, even though this evaluation is, even though principally this evaluation techniques or evaluation, HRD evaluation need to be done on a regular basis, this method has a own limitation. Inherent limitation is that which can be used only at the end, right? So what Kirkpatrick proposed would be better described as a taxonomy of outcomes rather than a true model of training outcomes, right? So basically, uh, uh, we can only measure those four results only, not the others. Taxonomy of results in the sense that we have only four criteria given, not other things we can't, even though sometimes our objectives may be another thing, not the result, not the reaction. not the behavior, right? So we may sometimes the training program or development program may have been done based on another objective, but evaluation framework, we are going to evaluate only 4 criteria: reaction, behavior, results, and uh, learning. Only those 4 results we are going to measure, which covers a broader range of objectives. But suppose sometimes in case we might have some other uh, training objectives, development objectives that may not be covered by the this framework, because only 4 criteria is given. That's another criticism. Right. So data collection for HRD evaluation. For the evaluations, we can collect various data. So simply from the interviews, with the one-to-one interviews or one-to-many interviews, we can collect data about the success or strengths or weaknesses about the program. Through questionnaires, simply observations, tests, and simulations. So these are data collection techniques. And types of data: individual performance data, system-wide performance data, or economic data, like economic data, companies' overall rate, sales, companies' overall productivity levels, companies' overall efficiency levels, effectiveness levels, right? So those type of economic data can be taken as the data to determine whether the training program or development program is successful or not. And use of self-report data. So basically, self-report data. In the self-report data, uh, obviously, we are supposed to provide our own reflections about uh, the training or development. We need to submit our own essay type report, or maybe we need to submit our own report about the training program, saying that the program is successful or not, and what you get and what you didn't get, right? What are the strengths of the program? What are the weaknesses of the program? What you learn, what you feel about it, and how you recommend it to the future learners. And those type of things, different under different criteria, you can write your own report about the program that you attended, right? So that is self-report data. Right, so we have the same thing listed in a table: interview, what you can do, explanation of conversations with one or more individuals to assess their opinions, observations, and beliefs about the HRD program. And in questionnaire, standardized set of questions intended to assess the opinions, observations, and beliefs. A questionnaire is given to the participants, and in that, basically several type of questions, sometimes covering the, let's say, Kirkpatrick evaluation criteria. There may be some questions. Then you simply need to answer a Rickert type scale, and finally the answers are scored, and those scores finally added and get a final score. Then from that we can determine whether the program is successful or not. Then direct observation: simply the participants or the senior managers, immediate supervisors can observe the behavior and the results of the participants who attended to the training or HRD program. And by that, from that, simply they can determine whether there is a success or not. And tests and simulations: simply you can have a test, you can have a practical test, you can have a theoretical test, and you can ask the participant to simulate, because we discussed what the simulation, and you discussed about the in basket exercises, and in basket exercises is a simulation, right? So simply by using those things, we can evaluate uh, the success, evaluate uh, a training or development program or simply HRD program. And those are the data we can use. Right. I think now we have exactly the 12 o'clock and we have come to the end of the session. And from this point of afterwards, we can do the rest of the things.